welcome back to Baha'i Reflections. We are absolutely thrilled to have you with us for today's explainer. Real quick, if you're enjoying the content and want to dive even deeper, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you want exclusive early access to our future deep dives, joining as a channel member is the absolute best way to support us and help the channel grow. A huge, heartfelt thank you to all our current channel members. You guys are amazing. Today, we're jumping right back into our ongoing exploration of the summons of the Lord of Hosts, and we're zeroing in on an incredible 1868 document, the Súriy-i-Mulúk, also known as the Tablet of Kings.
Okay, let's kick things off by asking ourselves a massive question. If you suddenly had the undivided attention of the most powerful rulers on earth, what exactly would you say to them? It's a wild thought, right? But it perfectly frames today's explainer, because that's exactly what Bahá'u'lláh did with this audacious letter to the world's most powerful monarchs of the East and the West. And let me tell you, he didn't send them pleasantries, he sent them a mandate.
So here is our roadmap for today's grand finale to our Summons of the Lord of Hosts series. We're going to cover the context of the year 1868, dive into the actual message to the monarchs, explore the dynamic between divine justice and earthly power, and then finally, wrap up this epic series. Let's dive right into our first section, the context of the year 1868, and a voice speaking from exile.
To really put this into perspective, we have to look at the timeline. Bahá'u'lláh is addressing the rulers of the world after enduring over 20 years of constant persecution, imprisonment, and exile, all stretching back to 1844. He's writing this in 1868, during a time when global empires ruled with an iron fist, and he frames these decades of intense suffering against a future where all these rulers will ultimately face a day of reckoning and divine justice.
Just listen to the sheer contrast in this quote. Bahá'u'lláh writes of having tasted the agony of a fresh tribulation every single day for 20 years. He had been banished in the freezing cold, treated with profound indignity, and yet, he speaks to these kings not as a victim, but with absolute divine authority. He's literally holding them to account for failing to stay the hand of the oppressor.
This is exactly why this document carries so much historical and spiritual weight for Baha'is. It is the ultimate proclamation of his station, delivered right to the pinnacle of earthly power. You have a captive stripped of absolutely all worldly possessions, commanding the greatest empires of the 19th century to completely overhaul how they govern humanity. It's truly staggering.
Which brings us to Section 2, a message to the monarchs, and specific instructions for the world. I really want you to let that grand 19th century prose resonate for a second. The call to compose differences and reduce armaments so that expenditures can be lightened is incredibly prophetic. He is directly identifying that these kings were increasing their military outlays every single year and unjustly laying the massive financial burden of those armies right onto the backs of their subjects. And this brilliantly illustrates how the theology of 1868 translates into a modern, highly practical takeaway for global peace. Bahá'u'lláh isn't just saying, hey, peace is good. He's giving a structural economic command, demilitarize so you can stop excessively taxing your citizens. Heal your dissensions, keep only the weapons needed for basic defense, and alleviate the suffering of the common people. So he isn't just speaking in abstract spiritual terms. He is laying out a highly specific blueprint for ethical leadership. He explicitly tells the monarchs to rule with absolute equity, to safeguard the rights of the downtrodden, and to not just rely on armies or earthly treasures. He even tells them to personally inquire into the affairs of their subjects rather than just blindly trusting corrupt ministers.
This right here is the crucial takeaway. True sovereign duty, according to this text, isn't about expanding your borders or amassing wealth. It is entirely about caring for the poor who are described as God's trust. He warns these monarchs that they will absolutely be called to answer for how they treated the most vulnerable people in society when the balance of justice is finally set.
Let's transition into Section 3, Divine Justice and Earthly Power. This is where the text completely dismantles the illusion of earthly power. Think about the profound contrast between these two realms. On one side, You have the fleeting, transitory things of the earth: wealth, armies, costly ornaments, and political power. These are exactly what the monarchs valued. But on the other side, you have the realm of everlasting glory, which is all about proximity to God, firm adherence to his precepts, and true justice.
I absolutely love the logical brilliance of his argument here. He's basically telling these proud, highly ornamented kings, look, if gold, silver, and jewels are what make you so great, then the literal dirt beneath your feet is greater than you are, because that's exactly where all your wealth comes from. It's such a profound, humbling reality check for earthly ego.
It's also fascinating how he directly challenges specific groups right on their own theological grounds. He addresses the kings of Christendom, pointing them straight to the Gospel of John, asking why they didn't draw nigh when the Spirit of truth arrived. And he does the exact same thing with the French and Persian ministers, calling them out on the very scriptures they claim to uphold while committing such grievous injustices. And he makes it abundantly clear there are inevitable consequences for ignoring these warnings. He tells them outright that their earthly possessions and their ministries will vanish, and that divine chastisement will assail the unjust. Every ruler will be called to answer. Above all, he establishes that the cause of God cannot possibly be thwarted by something as small as imprisonment or even death.
Now, moving into our final section, concluding this epic series and reflecting on the enduring legacy of this text. What you should truly take away from all of this is that the Súriy-i-Mulúk wasn't just some grievance letter written in the past. It was, and remains, a structural blueprint for the future global order. These calls for demilitarization, equity, protecting the poor, and achieving global unity, they literally form the spiritual foundation of the just world that Baha'is are actively striving for today. And with that, we officially conclude our Summons of the Lord of Hosts series. We are going to be starting something entirely different very soon, so I want to sincerely thank all of our listeners for joining us on this journey. Again, a very special thanks to our channel members. If you have any special requests, ideas, or specific letters you'd like us to explore next, please drop them in the comments below. And remember, liking, sharing, commenting, and joining as a member are the absolute best ways to support us. I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to ponder. Imagine, just for a second, the trajectory of the 20th century if those mighty empires had actually listened back in 1868. If they had laid down their arms and embraced equity, how incredibly different would our world be today? Thank you so much for watching Baha'i Reflections, and we look forward to bringing you more deep dive explainers soon.